Welcome back to another episode of I Am Maria podcast. Today conversation is one that holds truth, courage, identity, and the freedom that comes when you finally meet yourself. My guest today is someone whose life speaks to what it means to evolve, to question everything you have been through, what you knew, and to honor the parts of yourself that refuse to stay silent. A woman who revealed herself entirely, her life from a place of honesty, emotionally, personally, professionally, and spirituality. This episode is about discovering who you are, even if it means changing everything around you. About listening to the inner voice that whispers and then insists until you can't ignore it anymore. Felicia, thank you so much for being here. I'm honored to hold this space with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we're gonna begin because we need to start getting to know Felicia White. And my first question is, who is Felicia White?
So I'm going to start by answering your question by saying I am Maria. And the reason why I begin with that is the very first podcast I listened to and how you speak to be what being Maria is and how we all can be Maria and all of us have different parts of Maria in us. And so Maria transcends just being a yourself who you are, but there are things that I can relate to as part of that and many others as well. And I think that's probably why this podcast in this space speaks to so many and is so important. And it's what stood out to me. And so I own a bit of Maria in who I am as well. I am a young woman, and I say young, although I'm probably approaching middle age now. I think what number period that falls into. From the South, I grew up in a small town called Trenton, South Carolina. It was probably about a half hour or so away from Augusta, Georgia. People are probably more familiar with that city. It's probably one of the big little cities in the state of Georgia, home to the Masters Golf Tournament and all that fun stuff. I actually graduated high school, though, in Augusta, Georgia. I was a debutante growing up. So I guess you can add to that being a Southern Belle is a part of who I am. But I've grown to become a very dedicated friend, family member, professional, and passionate learner, passionate teacher as well. As part of what drives me is to be able to help make people become them best selves, whatever that version of them looks like. And so I believe being able to teach and to show others is a big part of that. And that's why I spent probably the last, over 20 years in roles that allowed me to support other leaders through training, through operations performance, and being able to both even grow them through business, but also just understanding and finding what those passions are that speaks to them.
Well, that is very kind of you. You're very kind, and you you don't really know how much it means to me. Your words. It is not the first time that I hear from you that you are Maria, and I appreciate that very much, Felicia, because that's the message. That's the purpose. Yeah, that's my message. And about you also, your story is very inspiring. And of course, we're going to dig in depth into your decisions and your toolbox. But also the way that you accompany people, like you're there with them to support them, to make them evolve and become the best version, that is very nice and kind from a human being to do.
Thank you.
And decisions are everything, in life, Felicia, and we can speak about many. In I Am Maria podcast, we try to stay in one, two, three decisions that have led you to have the life you have today and become the person that you are today. So, can you drive us into those important decisions in your life?
Sure. So one decision was, I'll start out with, was the decision to come out as a lesbian to my, at the time, ex-husband, or at the time husband, and now since ex-husband, but also a good friend of mine still to this day. And I start with that because not only as many other people who would identify as such would probably share, but it connects directly to an inflection point when it comes to my career. At that time, I was shared with from a leader of mine in a performance review that no one knew me. And that could take on many different tones. And of course, this person did not know that part about my identity. But what the highlight of that is that the person was sharing with me that I was closed in. At the time, I was very much, I'd say, one of those individuals who many of us who are socialized into to doing at often, especially as a woman, is you come in, you put your head down, you do the work, you only talk about the work, and you just focus on the work. And so the only way people know you is the work. And so when that leader shared that with me, I thought, well, I'm doing a great job. Everybody knows what to call me for, and they see me in meetings and all the different things. But in hindsight, and it wasn't at the moment he shared with me, of course, that feedback that I got it. I took it and first thought, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and kind of, you go down that rabbit hole. But in later, after reflection, I did realize that what he was sharing was that people didn't know who I was because they only knew the work. And of course, we know that if people want to connect. Part of us as being humans is to connect with each other. And if we don't share our stories and just even crack the pages of those books and start to allow people to see and read and know who we really are, then we are giving them room to misinterpret who we are because they in their mind make up stories. Not that is they're being it's a bad thing that they're doing or they're doing it out of any type of malice. It's just they want to connect. So if you're not sharing with me who you are, I have to kind of maybe come up with for myself who you are. It's just like when we people watch in the airport and we come up with a whole story about where a person's going and what they're doing, what they get there just by seeing them walk by and what they might be carrying and all of that, which could totally be so off base. It's exactly that same thing when we aren't just open because when our teams, when we people that even in relationships, but we which we find at times easier to do in those situations, but with teams we come in and yep, I'm your boss or I'm your peer. This is what I do and I do the things, but what do you do when you leave? What is your family like? What do you do on the weekends? What are you interested in? And so fast forward, when I started to do that, it connected at the same time that I shared with what I mentioned about my ex-husband because when we did subsequently get a divorce, I had to change my name in my email and do those different things. And it was funny because when I first changed my email, I got a response. Sent out a note, got an email back from someone that says, "Congratulations," because they thought I got married. Which just shows how closed in I was because they were congratulating me on getting married and I had actually gotten divorced. And so things continued to play out from there where I subsequently started to date women and I was started to be open about that with people at work because they'd ask, so, what are you going? Or you bring someone to a function. And so we see that, of course, it's very hard to say, I'm gonna leave home at the door, and when I'm in the office or when I'm at work, I'm only gonna be about work because our lives are so intertwined. And it's someone who, like myself and you as well, who are you be very passionate about the work you do, and it becomes part of your identity. You have to bring that in with the parts of who you are that are you personally because they connect to each other. We just like we have friends at work and sometimes find spouses and partners in the same spaces. We do we you can't just cut that off. So that one decision actually started to compound a lot of others because I began to dress differently and wear my hair differently and a lot of other things as a result that just embraced more of who I like, more of the things that I like to be, more of who I am, and as an individual in that way. And enjoyed it. It was fun. It was very liberating to be able to do that. But I noticed as at the same time that it created space and gave permission to other people to do the same.
Wow, very powerful. Not only because one person can give permission to many others, right? To have that courage that you had, especially with this decision, Felicia, because I am sure it took a lot of courage and effort from you. And I want to ask you because that's why we have this podcast right now, because we like to inspire more people that might feel the same way, or that it's going through the same thing. And with your story, Felicia, you're going to inspire and motivate them a little more. And I'm here thinking, when you look back at that moment, that you realize you weren't in love with your husband, what was that feeling that told you something inside was changing?
It really was a feeling of, I guess the best way to describe it is a need to be honest. And I felt that for with our relationship, we were great friends, but the things that he really wanted when it came to a relationship and a wife, I would never give that to him. And so for me to stay in that situation and do that, I really would be holding up space for him to have that from someone else. And so it wasn't fair for me to do that. Neither would I be fair to myself had I made the decision to stay in that situation as well.
Totally. Can you share a moment when that truth became louder than your fear?
It's really interesting. It was actually I was reading a book, and in the book, this person in the talked about making a similar decision with a partner that they were with. And so that moment, it was, I'm reading the final pages of that particular book. And that's when it really stood out to me that I have to do this. I have to be honest. I have to share this because if I don't, and in in this story, this person talked about the years and years and that they had gone through, and they had actually had children and did all the things. And I'm thinking, man, would I what would it be like if I sit at this point, made a different decision and went on for years and years and had children and did all of the things, and then it becomes a harder situation and a even bigger, I guess, I'd say mess of a bigger, for lack of a better word, to unravel at that point. Whereas this was fairly early in our marriage. And so there could, to save both myself and him and others potentially that could have come along, a lot of heartache.
Wow. It's very nice that you're thinking on you, which is very important, especially because as you're saying, if many others are coming and you're not happy, truly happy, then things are not going to flow smoothly. Let's put it that way, right? Now, when you think about your marriage, back then, right? What is that memory that reflects the version of you that was trying to be who you thought you should be?
That was that version of the debutante, the Southern Belle. Which, by the way, I loved my days in the Rosa T. Beard Debutante Club, and loved my time being in, and loved the cotillions and all of those different things. But growing up, I was told by the other women in my family, aunts, even my mother, that I would make a great housewife. And that would be what I would grow up to be. My mom didn't tell me, hey, you're gonna go to college and be a X or a Y. As I said, it was that, hey, you're gonna make a great wife. And I would be told that from other individuals. And so, funny, I went to college to find a husband, essentially, because that was what I didn't go to college thinking, oh, I'll learn about this subject and have a career in this industry. It was just something to do and spend buy time until I had gotten married and did all of that typical package thing that I was being told that I would end up doing. And so that is the version of me that I took into that. Even when I accepted his proposal, went into that marriage, because it was me being now fulfilling what I thought what is the person that I was supposed to be.
I love that you speak into that because many times we grow up thinking that we need to be to fulfill what we came to this world to do, and many times it's what others want us to, to be or to become. And I always wanted it to be a mom, but I totally understand and respect the people that don't want to become a parent, you know? And that's not something that it's like, oh, you came to this world to have a family. No, you came to this world to be happy. And in order to be happy, if the answer is that you don't want to have a family, that's it. That's it. And our culture, many times, they don't respect that. And I believe that is so good that nowadays people are finding that honest inner voice.
Exactly. And speak to what it is, that version, whether it is you can be a lesbian and be a mom and have a family and do all those different things. It's moving away from what those typical norms that are kind of thrown out there, and that term norm, which is abnormal anyway in itself, but to be able to say, what is it that you want to be? Who is it that you want to be? It's just as in the same token of someone who may be told that you're going to be a doctor when you grow up, and or you're going to be a lawyer and you want to be an artist, or you want to be a musician, and but you feel like you can't because you were told you were gonna grow up to be this thing, and you move into a career and you're unhappy for years and years and years, and you think back, well, what if I had instead followed my passion to be a musician, or followed my passion to be that artist? What is the world missing out on that fabulous song or that great piece of artwork that we didn't get to see or hear because of that person not stepping into that truth that they hold?
Yeah, you speaking about that makes me think even on the people that needs to make that decision on not working on a family company, but stepping up on their own. Of course, we're gonna keep making this your story, Felicia. So I'm thinking if there was someone or a conversation, an experience that helped you to feel seen in this new chapter of identity, because I am sure that many times there was a lot of uncertainty, like I don't know if this is true or not. and maybe something help you. I know you mentioned a book, um, but was that moment the one you realize I'm ready for a new chapter?
That it was that moment, and I think what really changed as I continued in there was when I would just little by little start to do and be more of the things I liked. I started to again, I mentioned maybe dress a certain way and wear my hair a certain way, and where I would start to get compliments about things, what I had on, or how I was wearing my hair, or a tattoo that I had gotten that was in a more visible place where I'd start to get compliments and things. And this is just, purely physical, but that didn't happen before. And I would start to get noticed. I got promoted at my job. And because I think when you start to, on the outside, embrace and be and really walk into those things, it's happening on the inside as well. People just see it. They just see the change physically from what they can visually see from the outside, but it starts within and it does become a part of how you operate, how you speak, how you enter a room, and even how people can feel that they have a genuine connection with you in a moment, even if it's brief, because they are connecting with you and the essence of who you are in that moment. And so those things would continue. I can recall a conversation I was having with a colleague in a car, and that person asked me how I was doing with her in a particular on a particular day. And we could typically say, "Oh, I'm fine," or "Everything's going well." And I actually opened up to that person about a personal challenge I was having, and it wasn't related to this, but it's just in general. And in that moment, that person, well, they thanked me for sharing that with them, but they subsequently thought, "Wow, I could have challenges and have things that might happen personally, but I could still at the same time be this director of training or whatever those different things are because they see the human side." And so I think for me, there was a series of just additional, I'd say daily decisions almost to say, hey, I'm gonna, you know, what are these cowboy boots, which I now collect and have way too many probably as a result, and this bow tie that because I just think it's cool, but it later becomes a part of your brand image, and I think I always in the back of my mind think back to Sally Jesse Raphael, if you remember her and she would wear those red glasses, and I have to believe there was some point she said, you know what, these red glasses would be cool, and the red glasses just became a part of who she is, but who she was as a person and the way she would present, it just carried through. And so I kind of, like I said, it was kind of a constant daily thing, many different actions and different times that things would occur over a point. But the theme became authenticity and being authentic as a leader where people will know what to expect and to see who you are. And I think a really good friend of mine got married a few years back, and she was thanking people for helping at different points, whether they were in the wedding or helping with different roles. And I actually coordinated the wedding. And one of the things she said about me, which I thought was the most beautiful compliment that she could have given, was that if you look in a dictionary next to the word consistent, you would see a picture of Felicia. And so, which to me spoke in that people know what to expect. They know what it's going to be, what this interaction is going to be. Even if they hadn't met you, they've heard of it. And then when they have that opportunity to connect with you, when they've heard of you and they have that same experience, it's actually pretty it's really nice experience for them to have. And they know it's like, yeah, wow, that she really is who I expected, or who every time I see her, she's that same way. She presents that same way, and so you have that. It kind of gives you one a feeling of trust, and I know I can trust who this person is going to be and what I'm going to get. But it's also kind of safe. I guess especially when it comes to being doing the type of work I do and being in training and developing and supporting operations and other leaders, people have to feel safe and they have to be able to trust you in those moments. And if they can't, it's going to be a block to anything else that you may be trying to accomplish with that audience, with that individual coaching moment. And so those are the foundational pillars of that. And it has to start with, can I trust who this person is in an individual first?
Wow, totally. I think when you get to really be your best and authentic self, then you can give the best of yourself to others. And definitely what you're saying, they are going to trust you. Now, Felicia, I can't wait to explore all your leadership part, and we still need to explore two more decisions. So I'm gonna try to ask a few questions in a way of closing up this chapter that we're discussing in terms of your identity, and then into how who you are today, how is that you apply these tools today. So my first question is, what what did you discover? Wait, sorry, I lost my here. What did you discover in your attraction to women that was awakening in you? And I speak on these, emotionally, spirituality. I don't know if it was the energy, because as you're saying, you started to be more authentic. I am sure that your relationships as well, your family, your friends, your community, in a way started to shift, right? To step into your new reality, your true self, your new life. I want to ask you what surprised you about those relationships. And the last part is, I know when we need to leave something behind, there's a hard moment, right? So, what was the hardest part of letting go of the life you had before? And what was the most beautiful part of stepping into the life you have now?
Okay, so I'll start with the last question as far as what was the hardest part. And the hardest part was really for me and anyone who is an introvert who is one of those people who prefers to be in the background and allow others to take the spotlight would probably agree with is I cannot be hidden in the background anymore. I can't hide behind costumes of who and what other people may think I should be. I now have to be the one on stage because I'm putting myself fully out there. And that was the hardest thing to walk away from. But at the same time, it was the most beautiful because it was extremely freeing to do so. It's like the biggest sigh of relief one could possibly breathe because it is really hard to try to be someone else. I applaud actors and actresses every day for the work they do when they take on a role and they perform in a movie or a play because you have to become that character and that is super hard to do. I can only imagine how it is to really fully put yourself mentally in that situation. And so those that do it and they're great at it, that's definitely a skill that they've honed. And so when we say, why take bother being someone else, you can and be yourself, it can be hard to do. But when you do fully step into that and you say, you know what, this is who I am, and this is who this is what you get, it can be very freeing and is easy to do too, because it's way easier to just be yourself versus being someone else. And so when it comes to those things that maybe surprised me or about when I started, and I'll have to be honest and say, when at that point with my ex-husband, that was not the first time I was ever attracted to a woman, and so it was things. It just wasn't something that I even really knew growing up where I grew up. I didn't know anyone who was like that or had those types of relationships, at least not openly. If they did, they wasn't open. So I didn't know what that looked like. Yeah, it's one of the things that I think is great about where we are in society now. It can sometimes can be a good thing, but it's also can be overwhelming because you can meet and see so many people, different types of people through things we see on TV and social media, and get to see and even be able to have the ability to travel the world and see and experience other cultures and connect with different people. You can learn so much more about yourself as a result of that. And you're like, oh, aha, oh, I didn't realize that maybe that's what this particular desire I have in me is as well. And so it became in that going in that moment, what I guess surprised me was the reactions of others. And because many people were surprised, and honestly, both in people I knew from work or friends and family, that I was ever attracted to men in the first place. Even my mom, when I told her, which to this day we sort of laugh about it at times, but when I mentioned it to her, she just said, "Oh yeah, it was just something you suppressed." And my mom was like, "Well, if you knew that about me, why didn't you say something?" But at the time, her being the type of mom she is. She should never wanted to interfere in her children's relationships because she told me once that she divorced her first husband, who was the love of her life until he passed away, because of what other people told and interfered in their relationship. And she didn't want to, and it was actually his mother that caused it, and she didn't want to be the catalyst for one of her children, losing out on that great experience because of that. And so it's many people that I would share it with, or people that just knew me, maybe even knew me before and quote unquote after, actually was like, yeah, I always thought that of you. I just was, so it wasn't so much of I guess a big awakening in that sense. And there was some person or moment that woke it up, where you maybe met this particular woman and she just changed my life. It was just who I was and just had never really realized it, I guess.
That's that's nice how I mean it's nice to see how you are just like embracing it over at the time you embrace it like your family, your friends were there for you and how sometimes we don't want to accept things. I don't know what it is based on fear or many emotions can happen, but I am so inspired and really I love your story and how you share it, and also how I'm sure you're helping others navigating into this self-discovery season, because it's a season, right?
Yeah, I think what any change you make, whether it be in the sense that we're talking about, but a career change, a change to say, yeah, I now want to retire and start a second career, or any major decision in those ways can be one scary to make because it's very unknown. One of my favorite quotes is Martin Luther King's, that where he talks about you don't have to see the full staircase, just take the first step. And so you may not know what is there and what is going to ultimately happen, but if you don't change the space that you're in now, you will never know, and you may always have that as a question that you're moving in. And so self discovery can be so great. It can be it can be somewhat scary too at times, but there's so many different things into life to experience, and there's so many different people, and that's one of the beautiful things about human beings, because we all can be so different. Even a set of twins that can be very very different, while at the same time have all these different things in common. And in that case, even physically. So yeah.
Totally. Be yourself. That's the best thing we can get from this. Felicia, this is one important decision in your life. Can you take us into your other important and life-changing decision?
Yeah, sure. So, the second would be, and it was even though it was a decision, it was sort of decided for me, but it was very, it actually is one of the biggest learning experiences that I've had, and it was when I was downsized from a role I'd had at the time for a company I've been with for years and years and years, and so I say it was a decision that was made, but it gave me a decision to actually try and be able to move in and understand and learn what it's like to go into a new organization and meet new people and learn a new group of people, learn a new operation, even especially when you've been someplace for 10, 20 years plus, you know that place inside and out, you know the operation, you know what they do. It can kind of create somewhat of a little bit of a tunnel vision because it becomes sort of habitual in a way to do that work. And so being able to go out and have now be in joint going into a situation where you're learning and being with other people, it gives you an opportunity to learn new skills, maybe bring those things that you had and apply in a new way. And we can get comfortable in it. And that's why people retire from organizations that they've been in for years because it's been great and they've enjoyed it. And I applaud it. But I always say, what is creating that space for you to make that stretch? And so that would be one. And then the third, I would say, would be when I decided to get my PhD. And it was a decision I made because I was at a point where I was thinking for what is new and what is different, and just thinking through. And this is during the pandemic, which many people had many moments during the pandemic of what's different, what can I do different, what should I learn? I would like pick some people picked up a new hobbies. I bought a some people bought a Instapot. That was the first time they used that, or decided to start a social media career. And for me, I said, you know what, I think I'm gonna go back to school. And my it was funny because my younger sister got hers years ago. And when she got hers at the time, I said, I would never get a PhD. We've got one doctor in the family. We don't need more than that. And I don't need a doctorate in what I do. And so when I made that decision, I found myself, I had to call her up first and told her what I was going to do. And I said, first of all, I got to eat my words because I told you I would never do it. And now I'm thinking about doing this. And then I made the decision to do it. And I thought, well, I'll apply for the program. The worst that could happen is I don't get in. And if I don't get in, that must mean it wasn't meant for me to do it. And out of 300 applicants for the program, 35 were chosen. And I was one of the 35. And subsequently, that meant I had to go ahead and do it and see it through. And so, but it was one of the best decisions I made as well, because that process of going in and having to do the research and study and back in, especially at this point in life, it taught me so much more about myself and how I could take on a challenge such as that and actually see it through to the other end. That I could back to school while starting a new job with a new company and all those different things. And I learned more about myself and different layers of myself, and in even ways that I can learn new technology and things that I just thought, oh, I'm good, I'm good. It just added more and more to who I am and to my personal repertoire, and how even to connect with individuals more and be able to now take that information and use it both with what I do on a day-to-day basis, but even with how to maybe motivate others if they're thinking about deciding to do something like go back to school, especially later in life. How it may be something that may seem kind of scary, and you want to can I school nowadays is a lot different. I graduated with my master's in 2005. Going back to school in 2021 was a lot different than it was in 2005, but I could learn it, I could pick it up, I could embrace it, and I could actually do and be successful at it. So
And I can do more with my free time.
yeah, now that I have it, I gotta find something else to do. I'm getting bored.
Wow, that is so cool because it's like doesn't matter what situation you have in life, you're like, okay, what can I do? What can I do to be better? What can I do to grow? Um, and I love that you mentioned that there was a moment or decision that changed your life and not necessarily you took it. Maybe somebody else took it for you. And during that moment, you know, um, many things might happen or like travel to your mind, thoughts, fears, all those emotions. Is there a moment that you may remember from that transition that still makes you emotional when you think about it?
Yeah, it makes me smile actually, and it was because I had not long after a group of former colleagues of mine who they were actually in town for a meeting at the organization and invited me out to dinner. And one of the individuals, while we were having dinner, she made the comment to me that sometimes you have to jump, you have to get pushed because you won't, you are, sorry, she mentioned sometimes you have to jump before you get pushed. And so, in other words, there's times where we may be faced and go with making a particular decision and we hesitate and we think, I'll wait, or maybe now's not the time, or I'm good where I am. And but really there's a nag or something kind of in the back of your mind, and you may not even realize it's there, that's saying you should jump, you should make the change, you should try that thing, you should, take on that new career or change jobs or whatever, that has been that nagging thing in the back of your mind. And when you don't do that, though, sometimes it just continues to continue. And before you know it, the universe is going to say, hey, this is where you're supposed to be, or where you are now is not where you're supposed to be. So I'm going to push you to make that happen. And I keep that statement that she made in mind in the back of my mind, and I just continue to stick with it. And I've shared it with other people even too. And it's always a reminder that, hey, take the leap. Go, like I've mentioned that quote, take that first step, because if you're number one, if you don't do it, you may be keeping someone else to take from taking their first step that's in line behind you. But number two, you're limiting from yourself you're limiting yourself from that opportunity to again learn more about how great you are as a person and how you can stretch yourself and those things that you can learn and take on and try. And but you may be so hesitant to do so because I'm comfortable where I am.
Being comfortable, and maybe you had a feeling that you were ready, but sometimes we just don't want to listen to it. And um, I want to ask you during that time, that season of change. Again, emotions are high. You don't know where is that life is gonna take you. So how did Felicia hold emotionally in that season, navigating the truth of who you were while trying to make sense of a life that you had already built?
Oh, sure. One, it was just allowing myself to feel the feelings. And I tell people that, and I've had it happen since where I was downsized from a role, and many people maybe have experienced it. We see it happen every day. If you look on LinkedIn, you see where someone is sharing that their role had been eliminated, and those different things that happen. And it's at first it feels like you've gotten the rug pulled out from under you, but then there is the floor underneath the rug. It's so that rug comes out, but you're still standing. There's the floor still there. It may not feel that way at first, and I get it, but it does there, and so that's when you start to see the support. But in that moment, I told myself then, and what helped me was to the times I felt the feelings to just feel them. And then you're able to, okay, I'm angry. I'm going to feel angry in this moment. Now I'm going to move beyond that. Or I'm sad. I'm going to feel sad in this moment. Now I'm going to move beyond that. Because then I can have that moment, have the clarity and now move forward with whatever it is I need to do next, whether it's taking that time off or looking for a job or preparing for going to volunteer and just doing those things to one still feel productive. Because then I think for me that was which I'm sure many others who may feel and experience, and when something like that happens, because a lot is connected to the work we do financially, the financial security, the people that we've built relationships with at the organization, and who, when someone asks you about who you are, a lot of times people start out with what you do as their answer, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a doctor, or I'm the director of whatever at X company. And so when that is stripped away, it does help you to learn more about who you are. So those answers are based on who you are as a person, not connected solely to what it is that you do when it comes to a job or a career. And so having those, I always again, like again saying having that taking that time, have the feeling, feel the feelings, have that moment, but don't stay in it and don't get stuck in it. Because you do have to move forward. You do have to move past it. It's like when you experience a death of someone close to you, which I've had that happen, is you go through the emotions that come along with it, but you do wake up and you're like, oh wow, I am still here. Sometimes you wake up and like, yeah, that thing did happen yesterday or it did, but I am still here, so that means there is still more for me to do.
There's more for me to do. Leave it, don't run away from it so that way you can realign yourself. Um, it's really that how you can continue to transform yourself to the best and better version of yourself. Now, I'm all about questions. I know we're getting close to the hour, so I'm gonna shoot two questions and then I'm gonna start closing up the chapter, even though I don't want to. But um, what part of yourself surprised you the most once you allow your honest, your real self to be explored, right? And was there a moment in your adult life when you felt that, you were your best version of yourself without any filter, without performing to anybody else?
I think that's a great question, by the way. But I think that is really when when I connected with Chart and the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers. One of the first events of theirs that I went to, a conference, and many people talk that may know Chart or connected with Chart, they probably have those same experiences. But that is where that the extroverted part of my introvertedness came out. And so I would be surprised at how easy it was to connect with people, because that's an organization. If you go to a conference, everybody is just they just are there and they're just not there. They're being themselves. They're bringing those unique aspects of who they are to the procession they may present, or the icebreaker they lead, or even the way they welcome you when you come in and get your badge at registration. And I met many people, and I've many people who I'm very close to and are friends over the years as a result. But in one of those first sessions, I actually was it felt kind of weird, because you had all these people. I'm like, is this a cult? Everybody was just super nice, but they were super. You did not feel that there were people who were being inauthentic. Every interaction, from the phone call I got before I first came from my mentor at the time, was very authentic feeling. And so that I was surprised how easy it was for me to go into that event and be open and meet people and network with people, which I'd probably say prior to that, going to that first conference of theirs way back when, and I'd gone to conferences before then, and would be the person who would go. you go to the session, the networking reception. Oops, I'm going to skip that because that means I have to talk to people. I'm just going to go back and hide in my room and I'll see you back tomorrow morning in the session where I can sit in the back of the room. Though I couldn't do that there. And so it surprised me though how much I enjoyed doing it. And I would enjoy meeting people and look forward to those interactions. And I still have my moments where I want to go be quiet because I'm still an introvert, but that's part of me. It surprises, and I still am surprised by that to this day. When I meet with people, and I may meet with someone at a conference or an event, and they say, "You probably don't remember me, but I remember this conversation we had over lunch or over a drink at a reception or sitting at a table exercise in a group." And they may remember that years later. And I think on it, and it just every time it surprises me because in that moment I'm just being who I am. But when going back to what we started out with, when you bring your authentic self to that situation, that connection is going to happen, and it's almost I'm like that. The room stops for you, for that person, and for yourself as well, and it is a moment that they will remember in you too. And those things though kind of still surprise me because I still feel like I'm sitting in the back of the room, kind of hiding in the back, and no one notices who I am. Where those I am noticed, and people are taking notice and learning from it too. And goes back to I could think back to the very first, and I know I started off and I said that I am Maria too because I remember the first time I met you over lunch at a the Women in Restaurant Leadership event. And you sat down and you introduced yourself to myself and some other peers of mine that we were just talking. And I believe you were there by yourself, and you just started sharing not about, I'm Maria from X company. I think at the time you were at Burger King, and what you were doing, but you shared who you were and you talked about your son, and at the you even shared about your idea for a podcast. And I found that very impressive. It's not something I would have done back years ago when I'm thinking about that first conference, but it was very inspirational. And you stood out to me as somebody that I felt like I would always take notice of whenever I was in a room with you. And every time I've had the chance to be in a room with you, I've always taken notice of you, and I've always looked forward to hearing you speak up and say share your whether it's your example to us, to a discussion we're having, or but I like how you always start out with your who you are and that you are Maria, and then you go through the rest of the spiel. Because and having knowing who Maria is and what Maria represents, who Maria represents, it is why I said at the beginning why I am Maria. I'm Felicia. I am Natalie, which is my middle name. I am a happy person at times. I'm a sad person at times. I'm an introvert. I'm an extrovert. I'm a lesbian. I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman. I'm a leader. I'm a teacher. I'm a trainer. I'm someone who wears cowboy boots and bow ties, loves a neat whiskey, and one of my favorite beverages may just be club soda and lime. There's just all these layers and layers that people could have, and different things that we could connect with each other in those moments. And it's that's where I take away from life and try to bring to those experiences. And even when I have those moments, I'm still surprised by it as a result.
Wow, that was fire. You made me emotional. I had to like breathe very deep not to let these tears out because as you were speaking, Felicia, I remember that lunch. Um, I'm an introvert as well. You have found me on the restroom making, my 10 deep breath before going out. And I did that when I sat down with you and the other ladies and I introduced myself. And I remember, I will never forget that you told me that you were going to look after that podcast when was going to be alive. And I was like, I can't believe this moment right now. Is this true? Like the idea that I have inside me, did it really connect with them without saying who I am and at work and what I do? It was my true and my honest version. And I recall on the last conference you said that you wanted it to say I am Maria. That was very nice as well because everything you just said, it's really the purpose that I'm bringing here, with the stories like yours, like mine, and that's why the community it's Maria. It's just a name. It's just who we are. So I really wanted to extend here because it it touched my heart, and it really makes me emotional, inspires me, and motivates me to continue. And I'm gonna close with that because that was enough for me. But I want to ask you, Felicia, if there is anything that you will change looking back about your story.
Ah, I can't say that there is anything. I've learned so much from every experience, good and bad, um, that they all shape our who I am today. And had I not had those experiences, I wouldn't be the Felicia White that you know now. So the hard lessons that I had that were hard to learn, and the knocks down, the getting back up again and being knocked back down again, the tough decisions, the all of those are a part of who I am. Would do I wish life had been a lot easier? Absolutely, many of us would. But it again, I wouldn't be me had I not had those different things. So I can't say there's anything I would change.
What would you like people listening to take away from this episode then?
It's just be yourself. Really think that if you because if you're not yourself, you're not giving permission to others to be the same. There are people who are waiting in line to take their first step, but they can't if you don't take yours. So there are people who are wondering if can I be me and have a successful career or business or whatever it is that they're thinking that they would like to do in addition to being themselves. And if they don't see you do that, then they think they can't. So don't, don't wait, do it. Jump before you get pushed.
Be yourself and lead with example.
Hmm.
Felicia, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your truth, and the courage it took to rebuild your life from the inside out. Your story is a powerful reminder that identity isn't about something we choose once. It's something we continue uncovering layer by layer until we meet the self that was always waiting underneath. What you have shared today will stay with so many people who are learning to trust their inner voice, even when it asks for change, even when it asks for a new beginning. Thank you so much for showing us what freedom looks like when it's lived with honesty. And to everybody listening, may your honor the truth inside you. Be yourself, even if it whispers or even if it roars. See you the next time on the next episode of I Am Maria. Felicia, thank you so much again.
Thank you.